No, and not.
Okay.
Then we'll call the meeting to order. This is the May 19th meeting of the Environmental Action Committee. I'm Sarah Marsh. I'm the committee chair, and I represent the citizens of Ward 1 on the City Council. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Mike Emery. I live in Ward 4, and I work for the Washington County Animal Shelter.
Joanna Pollock, and I live in Ward 2.
Peter Niergarten. I am the City Sustainability and Resilience Director and the staff representative on the Environmental Action Committee.
I'm Garnet Wise. I'm the industrial representative. I live in Ward 2.
Connie Chris, Ward 1.
Angela Wisely, citizen at large.
Rob Moore, citizen at large.
Richard Russell, Ward 1, geology degree. I've done civil design, currently working for a bank.
Okay. We had to approve the minutes from last month. Did we have minutes from last month?
Just the.
Or did I miss
We don't actually have minutes. Is that on the agenda, actually?
I believe it is. I think it's part of the new standard template.
Last month was a Greenway meeting.
Yeah, last month was
Yeah.
a remote meeting. My philosophy on minutes, and anyone who doesn't like my philosophy, feel free to speak up, is that our meetings are recorded, and the recording is going to catch every word, and minutes are not going to catch every word. And so, to me, it seems a little redundant to do minutes.
I would agree with that. Is there any?
No, item 2 is approval of the meeting agenda.
Of the meeting agenda. Okay, I copied that down wrong. Okay, so do you want to put the meeting agenda up here so we can approve it? And were there any additions to the meeting agenda?
Yes, I propose that we discuss whether or not we need a policy for conveying a procedure for cleanup after festivals.
Okay. Anyone, do we want to discuss that before or after the business we have on here?
I'd like to get involved in the discussion, but I don't care when.
Yeah, I don't
Would
either, but I like the idea.
definitely be new business,
Uh-huh.
so it could be anywhere in new business.
Okay, let's put that at the, well, let's just go ahead and start with that. Do you think 5 to 10 minutes would be sufficient?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. All in favor of discussing that first and approving the rest of this? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Seeing as we have no old business, Joanna, what would you like to talk about with that?
Okay, well, last night, I was part of the crew that did trash cleanup after the Block Street party. And I don't know exactly how this happens, but there's some sort of a procedure so that, like, if a group in town volunteers to do the cleanup, then that group can have $500. And so Tricycle Farms was that group, and since I'm on the board and volunteer with Tricycle, we were the group that came out and did that. And it bothered me because, I was kind of proud of Fayetteville because there really wasn't a lot of trash, considering the huge festival that we had there. Like, people really do put the trash in the trash and the recycling. That was what I observed overall. I mean, but, there was still a lot of trash to clean up, and there just wasn't a procedure for making sure that we as volunteers had the proper equipment that we needed, like bags or receptacles, gloves, etc. But the main thing was there wasn't any message conveyed to us about what to do with the trash that seemed appropriate, and what to do with the recycling. And so it's kind of left up to the conscientiousness of whatever group happens to be doing that, and that could vary a lot. And so my thought was, if we had like a policy as a city that this is what we want to happen, then and we convey that to whatever group is responsible for doing the cleanup after a festival, then there would be more continuity in the process, and maybe more recycling would actually end up in the recycling, and more trash would end up where it needs to be. We did the best that we could, and we were a pretty conscientious group. We were like, well, we've got to find somewhere to take this recycling. The message that we got was, just put the trash in any dumpsters that you can find that are not full. Don't put them here or here, because those businesses don't like it when we do that. It was just really kind of willy-nilly, if you will. And then, like, with the recycling, we just kind of had to figure out where it needed to go. And if if groups like that just had clear procedures and knew, then I just feel like the stuff would end up more where it needs to be, you know? Because I could really see, like, a group that didn't necessarily care a whole lot about recycling might have just taken all of the stuff and found whatever empty dumpster they could and thrown it in, you know?
Right.
Who planted the clear streams, do you know? The recycling bags?
I don't know, I assumed the city did that, but I don't really know who put them there.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing because they were full and it didn't look like they were getting other bags out too.
Yeah.
And so then it just overflowed into the trash, which I'm assuming you had a lot of recycling in the trash.
Yeah, there was
Yeah,
some.
and so, to add to that policy is, there needs to be a policy about the recycling. Those bags need to be changed, because I almost thought, you know,
Yeah.
whatever, whoever's in charge of the festival, that just needs to be part of it.
Right.
There's gotta be a group that changes those recycle bags as they fill.
Yeah, that's true, that's another matter that you
Yeah, I
observed.
was concerned about that yesterday, because I thought they're not changing them out.
We probably,
Previously, city employees have covered that.
I said, we probably ought to reach out. I know Brian Pugh, you know, obviously is the recycling sanitation, but then I think, don't the parks people empty the recycling cans on the square? Wasn't that part
I
of the
believe
agreement?
so, yeah.
So we need to talk to Brian and then coordinate who's, like, the festival, that may be off their radar, you know?
I think it is.
Right.
So we just need to, yeah.
But we do
get
issue a
everybody
special
talking.
event permit, and part of that permit could be requiring a waste management.
Yes,
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too, because I don't think there is one, because I know when I volunteered at other festivals,
Yeah,
it's kind of what you said, willy-nilly, as far as
Mhm.
what, you know, it depends on how conscientious the people are that are cleaning up as to what it really happens to any of that. And since Fayetteville and this group definitely are in favor of recycling always, then that should, I think that's a great idea.
yeah, and it seems like a simple matter. You guys have already figured out how we might address it, it sounds like.
Well, it would be good to get input, if we put this on an agenda at our future meeting when we get Brian Pugh in here, and someone from our Parks Department, and then, maybe someone, an event organizer that could give us some perspective from that side, and we could
That-
hammer out.
There's probably somebody like Brian that's thought about this and it's probably just,
Uh-huh.
maybe hadn't been formalized or maybe just not communicated.
In the past, they've done event recycling through their education team, has put
Mm-hmm.
together green teams, and they, you know, follow up behind, I think they did Block Street last year, actually. But the person who was in charge of that has left the city since, so
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's just kind of fell by the wayside because that was his pet project or what, but I can look into that.
Okay, thank you.
I wasn't there, I'm just trying to understand the situation. There was event recycling provided,
There's receptacles out there,
and there were the little wire things that open
Yeah.
up and,
Uh-huh.
okay.
but there weren't enough of them, so they, like, by the end of the festival, they were
full.
overflowing.
Okay, so they weren't
And-
getting changed out, and then y'all didn't have, like, the stuff that was on the ground, trash, if you will, on the
Right.
ground, when you were picking that up, there wasn't a clear way of separating the recyclables from the actual
Oh, heaven.
refuse.
Well, it wasn't so much that as that we weren't given clear instruction on what to do with the full bags of recycling and what to do with the full bags of trash.
I saw one sitting next to a recycling container on the square, like a full bag of recycling. Am I to assume that was,
That
that
was
was Richard?
Morning when I came to work, there was a full bag of cans in my basement break room, and I had it in my hand and I was doing my go-around, and I came out on the square and I said, oh, this is the rest of that event, and here's the recycling, and here's the trash. I'll just put this by the recycling, and whoever's, I mean, cans, there are a lot of people in town who are interested in big bags full of cans.
Mhm.
Well, it wasn't picked up by 4 o'clock, that's when I saw it.
So y'all had to source separate it, y'all separated all the recycling, or you just
No,
found a
no.
spot to put them all in bags?
We separated what was on top, you know, like what we could see. We didn't like dump out all the trash and go through
No,
it.
I'm talking about with the recycling.
Oh, no, we tried to find the right places to put the recycling, but we were given no instruction on how to do that.
But you mix bottles and
Yeah.
cans.
Yeah,
So
you
you
just
just
whatnot.
mixed it all.
residential.
Yeah, well, we mixed it in with the dumpsters that, or the recycling receptacles that are around in this area. That's what we did, because we didn't know what else to do.
Okay.
I don't know who the organizer was for this year, but maybe we should invite them as well if we have this as an agenda item, since this is starting the Block Street block party
Right.
organizer.
Right.
I believe it was Hannah Withers and
Hannah
her
Withers,
team,
it is.
and, it would be good to just hear from them.
Since it's starting the conversation, it might be nice, and they might be able to give us feedback from their perspective on how
Right.
to improve the system.
Right, and how the city can make it easier. to
Is there
work
a,
with that.
like, does the city have a designated event person for stuff like that, like for
Yeah.
permits and stuff, or?
We handle
I
our,
don't think so.
the permits, event permits are handled through our parking division. I know it sounds kinda strange, but because a lot of events happen on like the Walmart Center parking lot, and they manage the parking lot.
Yeah.
So block parties and street closures and events that are on city property or city right of way happen through the, parking division. And as I understand, I'm not an expert on it, but I believe they have some, token gesture to what is your plan for solid waste. But I don't believe that it gets down into the weeds of, what are you doing with recycling and trash and, trying to separate that. Do you have an event, recycling manager? I don't believe that there's any of that.
That'd be a neat, kind of a neat goal for Fayetteville though, to formalize that, 'cause I know I've been to other events before, and like, for example, Tricycle signed up to do cleanup, just like we've had at elementary school, sometimes we'll have, a public service group, like a sorority or somebody that'll sign up to help clean up, but nobody's necessarily assigned during the 8 hours of the event, and that's when you need other help, and some people just don't think of that. They think, oh, well, we got cleanup handled, but, yeah, there's a lot going on during the event, it's all the time, full trash cans in different places. So that might be something that, we could formalize, at least, to try to get event organizers thinking about it on the front end. And if it is something big, like they know it's gonna be big, like Block Street, maybe, and maybe Brian and his people have already thought of this, but maybe they could put extra front loaders somewhere, and designate them,
Yeah, that would be
Yeah, I mean, I think
great.
the city's
Mhm.
perfectly willing to,
Yeah.
and I don't know if there's a charge for those or not, but, provide that
Right.
as a
Yeah.
service ahead of time.
Right.
It's just it's a function of the event organizer needing to coordinate that with us to.
Right.
Yeah, if you kept this a shiny set of front loaders, and you could depend on them being there, it would be sort of an introduction to folks.
Yeah.
This is what they're gonna look like.
Public education, yeah.
Mhm.
You know,
It would
if
be.
they come to your neighborhood or your apartment complex.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next big one we got Spike Blues
And,
anyway, right?
Yeah,
How they
that's-
remember.
Yeah.
All over town.
So I think it's important that we have something in place, maybe, but when is that event?
It's in the
September.
fall, September.
Okay,
Late
so we've got-
September, early October.
But one more comment, since I've done a lot of volunteer stuff with different groups
Yes.
as far as recycling and cleaning up and stuff, and there is not something in place with the city. The city is okay with, at least that's what I was told, with you putting stuff out and collecting recycling, but I think that is whether or not the events person wants to do it. So I think having a stronger, I mean, just
A policy.
thank you,
Yeah.
a policy on it, because there really isn't one.
Yeah, it makes.
And Bikes Blues is a nightmare for the recycling, so, because we've tried it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
So-
hard to do.
It looks like, on a very near future agenda, we need to, get Brian Pugh from from the waste side, and then someone from Parks, and then maybe someone who's heavily involved in festival planning to come in and help us develop this
Possibly
policy.
the Bikes Blues people.
Yeah, I know,
That's
that's
a
vital.
huge, it's a huge, opportunity for us to recycle a lot of stuff that does not get recycled. So,
And that's also, how a lot of people coming from out of town, that's their first experience.
Right.
Fayetteville, and we want that to be positive and educate them about recycling
Yeah.
as well.
Out of curiosity, like when they get a festival, a permit or an event permit, is it cheap? I mean, you have any idea what that's like? I mean,
I don't know the cost. I know there's two different levels of permit. There's like an easy permit to get for small festivals and a more comprehensive permit, which I suspect this block party fell under.
right.
I don't know what the cost is.
Yeah, 'cause, that'd be interesting to get Brian's take and, to see if, how much the city incurs with their own cost handling stuff after the fact,
Mm-hmm.
'cause even the recycling, it's not a moneymaker, you know, it helps defer costs, but it's, you know, it's not a moneymaker even if they do recycle. It just helps keep it out of the landfill. But, yeah, I don't know if there might be an opportunity there to put some of the responsibility on these event people,
Mhm.
That's what I'm thinking.
you know,
So too.
charge them for the front loaders or whatever they need to.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, we will get that on, I know this next month we're going, on a tour, is that correct, Peter? And
That
then
is the plan.
probably the one following that, we can,
Yep, we can work
we
on
can
that.
address this.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, to new business, the National Climate Assessment was just released, and they, had some interesting things to talk, or to say about what we are, the climate change experiences we are going to expect in our region. And so we thought this would be a good opportunity to review that report and begin to think about resiliency planning. Joanna, did you want to
Yeah,
lead
Peter
this
asked me to
discussion?
say a few words about that.
Okay.
So I've got some slides to share with
Fantastic.
everybody.
I'll get out of the way, so we can all,
If you guys want to look at the National Climate Assessment website first, and then go into your slides, or
Is that what you gave us? And,
Mhm.
yeah.
what do you think would be the best way of presenting that?
Why don't we do the website after the
Okay.
presentation? Because a lot of the images
Mhm.
in the presentation are just from the website.
Sounds good.
Okay, so, Peter and I are actually working, with the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network, right now on a grant that is enabling us and, 9 other communities in the Southeast, to learn all that we can, basically, about community resilience planning and how to do it, how to measure whether or not it's effective, all that goes into it, et cetera, that we know at this time. And we recently had a call, and I used this adage in that presentation, and it seemed apropos to use it again tonight. The bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists, because I think it speaks to our need to adapt at this time in human history with the realities of climate change that we're currently facing and are projected to continue to experience. And Sarah so brilliantly wanted us to talk about the National Climate Assessment and its relevance to us here in the Southeast and to our town. I think it's great that these assessments come out periodically, and we just got another one, I think about 2 weeks ago. And there's a really well put together website that I would encourage everybody to visit, where you can see what's projected for the Earth, for the globe, for the United States as a whole, and then it breaks it down into different biome regions here in the United States, and so you can really narrow in and see what details are projected for the Southeast itself. And I've got a few of those in here, and I mean, you can read the whole 600-page report, but of course they don't call it an executive summary, but they have another website that you can go to that just hits the high points. So you can see here who's involved in the development of the National Climate Assessment, just kind of a real high level, the National Academy of Sciences. Many different agencies are involved. And in each slide you'll see there is this Partnerships for Resilience and Empowered Planning. That's because that's the name of the program that we're working on with the 9 other communities in the Southeast right now. PREP. These are the 12 large highlight areas that the National Climate Assessment has and drills down to if you go to the website. So each one of these is clickable, and you can read in more detail about any of these. So today I went through our changing climate and extreme weather, and these are the highlights, but then there's also regional reports. You can see right there where it says regions. When you click on that from the website, and we'll go to the website here at the end of the presentation, then you can really, you can see the Northeast, to the Midwest, the Southwest, the Pacific Northwest, et cetera, and of course the Southeast. So there's just a wealth of information out there about what is happening and what's supposed to happen in the future. this is an image I feel like, you know, probably all of us in this room have seen before. There is a correlation between the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and other greenhouse gases, but particularly carbon dioxide, and temperature rise when it comes to Earth's atmosphere. And you can see that from the amount of heat that the ocean is currently absorbing, glacier melt, Arctic sea ice melt, Antarctic glacier melt. We're losing our albedo effect currently, which is the Earth's ability to reflect heat, because we're losing so much ice cover, especially in the pole regions, for instance. So there's just many, many ways that you can see that the Earth is actually warming right now, and that it has been. It really started probably around the 1750s, but has just been escalating since the boom of the Industrial Revolution, and especially since the 1970s, as you can see.
I read in their report, for the southeast region, there's been an average of 2-degree temperature rise across the southeast since 1970.
Yes, and the southeast is actually a part of a real unusual little area on the globe that was called a warming hole for a really long time, because it didn't seem to be warming as quickly as other places on the planet. Now, the poles are the ones that are warming the fastest, but in general, the whole planet's warming, but then for some reason, the southeastern United States didn't look like it was warming for a long time, or warming as quickly of a rate. But that's changed in the last 10 years, and it's catching up with everywhere else and getting hotter. And it's projected to continue to get hotter.
I have a question. As far as, you know, lumping us in with the southeast, I mean, I know that's where we fall in the map, but we're kind of at the northwest tip of that. Are we really southeast, or are we kind of rounded in there in Arkansas?
Yeah, we're still considered part of the southeast.
Okay.
There are some subtle differences. I mean, throughout the southeast, there's variability, and there's kind of sub-biomes within that larger biome, but Arkansas is still considered part of the southeast, and we're more like other states in the southeast because we're subtropical. Like, if you just look at our climate before global warming took off, we're a subtropical climate, just like the rest of the southeast. So we're more like those states in terms of climate than like Missouri and our neighboring states.
But to your point, though,
to the north and west.
the 3 key messages for the southeast are rising temperatures, decreased water availability, and sea level rise. Well, we don't directly have to deal with sea level rise being as far away from the ocean as we are, but
Right.
we do have the potential for having indirectly being affected by sea level rise if there's climate refugees that leave those areas and migrate to our area.
Absolutely. I just was reading through also just, I guess it's the Great Plains and is it the Northeast that's above us?
The
Or whatever.
Midwest.
The Midwest.
And then the Northeast.
And it seemed like a lot of their warning signs were also applicable to us. So I guess my point is, yes, we need to focus on the Southeast, but, you know, remember, we're really close to these other
Mhm.
areas.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with you.
yeah.
So let's not overlook what they're going to be experiencing.
That's true. I haven't compared the Midwest projections to the Southeast, but that's a good point. I mean, there may not be that much of a difference between what's projected for the Midwest, but there is a big difference compared to like the Southwest, you know, and here,
Right.
or
There was
even
more of an
Oklahoma and
emphasis
here.
on drought
Mhm.
potential and agricultural impacts.
When you compare us to the Midwest,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
That we had more of that potential.
No, the
had.
Midwest
Yeah.
did have more.
Yeah.
And wasn't this
Yeah.
part, isn't this part of the Caribbean too, the southeast, isn't
Yes.
it considered?
It is.
So that was kind of confusing to me too, a little bit as far as,
Yeah, that Puerto
seems so
Rico is
different.
lumped
Yeah,
in
right,
with us,
right.
and
And the further you get north in the Midwest, the greater their temperature change projections are. Like northern Minnesota, northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin have the most significant change in temperature.
because they started out colder.
Right.
And there was also a lot of significant warnings on high fossil fuel energy prices. And, you know, we are heavily dependent on fossil fuels here.
We're actually the most intense region in the country in terms of fossil fuel use.
really.
Because we have a lot of industry here that is fossil fuel intensive. So I just picked extreme precipitation events because I think that's probably something that we all feel familiar with, and they're definitely increasing. what we're having here, I mean, we've always really had quite a bit of variability in weather, and you have to differentiate, of course, between weather and climate, but that variability is increasing, and it's projected to increase. So it's going to be less predictable, the weather, in the future, and we're kind of already really experiencing that, which that can make it more and more difficult in terms of getting prepared with your crops and things like that. We're seeing the same little towns and regions experience both drought and floods, sometimes at the same time. You know, you can be having a drought and then have a flood right on top of that drought, especially if you have a creek or river in your town. So extreme precipitation events are increasing. Now, in some parts of the country, extreme precipitation events are increasing, so you're getting these just tremendous downpours like we have experienced here in the southeast, but overall the precipitation is decreasing. That is not quite true yet for the southeast. But we're definitely, I think the next slide maybe is the one we'll see in a second. I'll show you in just a minute. Now, the point that Peter likes to make about what's going on here relative to precipitation and seasons. But you want to go to that one real quick? Let's just see that. Yeah, just while we're talking about that, you can see that really if you look at this, percent change is what this is, so be sure that you're seeing that. And we're having more and more precipitation in 3 out of 4 seasons, basically, but a lot less precipitation in the summer than we once did. And this is also a projection. So, and it's the A2 scenario is from the IPCC report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and that the A2 scenario is we just continue business as usual, and we don't do anything to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, which is kind of what we're doing right now. So. It's not much.
What I find most interesting about this slide is when you combine that decrease in summertime precipitation with an increase in temperature, well then you really have a recipe for, you know, these summertime, feels like you're in New Mexico kind of conditions that we experienced during the summer of 2011 and 2012 here. I mean, it was hot for multiple weeks at a time, low humidity and low precipitation, and it just sucks the moisture out of everything. The vegetation, the ground, the surface water, yeah. I mean, it really felt more like a desert type climate than we're normally used to. We're normally used to more of a humid, you know, heat in the mid to low 90s, not 104 and 10% humidity. And so, to me, it makes me begin to think about, okay, so if we're going to start experiencing more of that, then what do we need to do in terms of becoming more resilient to that type of weather phenomenon? We got to figure out a way to keep that wintertime, springtime moisture where we want it in the ground and in our plants and in our reservoirs, and maybe use less of it as well. So.
Yeah, it seems more and more imperative that we maybe catch the water when we're getting lots of it and figuring out a way to disperse it when we're not getting so much of it. And there's also all kinds of public health implications for summers like that as well, especially with children and the elderly and more vulnerable populations.
And then there's also the agricultural implications, because when it's really wet in the spring, like you might not be able to plant because it's too soggy to plow, and then your plants don't have much time to get established before the drought happens.
That's a really good
we've
point.
experienced that the last 2 years. Even this year and certainly last year.
Right.
Maybe you're like delaying your planting. Yeah.
Right.
Because of
That's
that.
a really good point.
And then
Wildfires are something that, you know, they experience out west, and you wonder about that becoming more
Right. Yeah.
prevalent here possibly someday.
Sure.
Low humidity and high heat is definitely a recipe for wildfires.
Is that part of the fossil fuel use too, is the extreme heat and more use of air conditioning and so on? I mean, would that add to what you already said about,
Yes.
I mean, just individuals, not even industry, but
Right.
everybody? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So.
Certainly
You
part of
wanna
part of that feedback loop, definitely. I mean,
Do you want to go back? Okay, here we are. Yeah, so this is just kind of a synopsis of what's projected for the southeast, and again, this is from the website that we'll go to here in just a little bit, but sea level rise, the economy and the environment. Population is a huge issue in the southeast because we've actually, since World War II, this is from the last National Climate Assessment Report, brought out the point that since World War II, it's the southeast that has been growing at a faster rate than the other regions in terms of population, and that's projected to continue. And some of that now is because we have some of the most affordable labor in the country. And our urban areas are really taking off more and more, so.
Yeah, states like North Carolina and I believe Florida have seen population growth at almost 20% population growth between 2000 and 2010.
I think I have that slide in here.
Yeah.
Sea level rise, so basically what the report does is it talks about kind of the major highlights overall, but then in each region it narrows it down to particular highlights for that region. So sea level rise is a highlight for the southeast. Obviously, like y'all were saying, not for Fayetteville, but for this region overall, certainly. And we're working with 2 communities through the PREP programs that are coastal communities.
Miami, Florida, and Charleston, South Carolina.
So we'll probably be seeing more climate refugees.
Yes, I think so. We already know that we're probably going to see a lot more people from the Marshall Islands in this area, given the large population that are in this region already. Increasing temperatures for the southeast, certainly. And water availability, we've talked about that quite a bit already, and
So
then again, that's exacerbated by population growth.
Yeah, and when we go into the climate assessment, I'll show you a graphic on there that how this fits with that. Decreasing summertime precipitation, higher summertime temperatures equals decreased water availability, particularly in the summertime.
So these are just some, bulleted points from the report relative to the southeast. Higher temperatures are also projected to reduce livestock and crop productivity. Climate change is expected to increase harmful blooms of algae. I thought that was really interesting. And, with the change in climate, there can be increased disease-causing agents. And then hurricane intensity and severity is projected to increase, and also the heavy precipitation events, so more extreme weather events. And the southeast has actually experienced more costs related to extreme weather events than any other region in the nation.
One interesting tidbit I read was related to allergens and so more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Plants breathe in carbon dioxide, right? So more carbon dioxide is probably actually kind of good for plants, right? More for them to breathe. Well, possibly, but as plants are potentially thriving more on this greater availability of carbon dioxide, a consequence of that could be greater production of allergens, pollen, so greater reactions to allergy season for those that have issues with that is one projection that may come back to bite us.
I was reading about with the fewer freezes, that's not going to kill off the pests or invasive species, so we'll be more vulnerable to those agricultural threats.
That's right. One outcome of the overall warming is a decrease in extreme cold, a decrease in extreme cold events, basically.
We saw.
And this one I think is really interesting because you can see number of events, and per this time period, 1980 to 2012, and you can see how intense the southeast overall. Arkansas didn't get the highest numbers, but look at Texas. I mean, goodness, compared to the rest of the country.
So is that adjusted for population or land area?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's not adjusted.
Could be some.
So they're a bigger state, but
Yeah.
a lot of states our size around us are bright red.
Yeah.
They've probably got hurricanes and tornadoes
Yep.
and floods, all of it.
This slide was brought to us by one of our consultant partners in the PREP program, and it just highlights that we this is population density, and then the next slide will show, that it's continued, the growth rate, actually. So,
Yeah, and look at North Georgia and North Carolina and Florida,
We've got
West Arkansas.
yeah, and then you can really drill down like you're doing and look at our region region of Arkansas.
The metro areas in Texas, lots of growth.
Look at Florida, my gosh.
Yeah.
Now, these are the communities that we're working with in the PrEP program, and this just started. I mean, this program, we really just launched, didn't we?
Last Thursday.
Last Thursday. So we're bringing it to you as fast as we're learning about it ourselves. That you can see the other communities that we're working with in this program. And we don't have any participation from Mississippi or Louisiana, but we're hoping that the products from this program will be useful to communities throughout the Southeast and potentially beyond, but we're going to really try to tailor it to the climate here in this region of the country. And now that just brings us into the discussion of resilience in general and what it means. And you hear the word resilience in a lot of different domains. Of course, we're focused on community and urban resilience, but essentially the definition from a theoretical perspective means the same across domains. It's the ability for a system to bounce back after a disturbance or a shock or a disaster, and the time that it takes for the system to bounce back from that without having to change so much that it actually becomes a whole new system. And that could be a human being, you know, that could be a society, it can be an ecology with all its many niches. We hear the term resilience applied to the economy now, culture, even supply chain. Corporations are now looking at this term resilience and how it intersects with community resilience relative to their products. And so if an organization like Walmart is concerned about supply chain resilience, they might be looking at, well, we have this particular product, say coffee, that's coming through this part of the world, and if that part of the world is hit by a hurricane, how's that going to affect our supply chain? Well, should we work with that community in advance to try to help them become more resilient before that happens, work with them afterwards, or just simply reroute our supply chain? You know, so they're asking those questions right now, and it's strictly pertaining to the realities of climate change that are happening. So even corporations are looking at those costs now.
But I think you raise a good point in terms of supply chain, you know, the big drought in California.
Mhm.
And so much of our food supply comes from California.
That's right.
And that is going to affect our grocery prices this year.
Yeah.
And so it's just important that we don't just look at our region.
Yeah, because California has been in a serious drought for a long time now, and it's not projected to change anytime soon.
So we have to be resilient against our projected climate changes for our region, but also resilient on against changes where we get goods and services from.
Right.
Yeah.
Having a more locally based economy and food system can certainly help with that. And this is a picture of folks volunteering out at Tricycle Farms, trying to work on local food system economy right there.
Looks like they're planting an apple tree.
Yeah. Oh, this is just the original definition that I've found that comes from the field of ecology, from the ecologist, Mr. Halling. Does anybody know his first name? I can't remember it right now. Anyway, a well-known ecologist from Canada, and then also the time that it takes to return to that stable state. So, go on. And these are the different domains when considering urban or community resilience. You've got your metabolic flows like the economy, food systems like we were just talking about, but then you've also got everything with the tax-based support from policies, procedures, ordinances, laws, schools, etc., and how, you know, that really governs and affects what you put in place in terms of your resilience plan, because some ordinances might need to be reconsidered and you may need to adopt some new ordinances so that you can have an effective community resilience plan. And of course your built system, that includes not only the actual buildings that we build and our infrastructure, but also ecosystem services, you know, as well as roads. So all of those things go into the built environment. And then social dynamics, I mean, one of the things relative to ensuring that your community is as resilient as possible is how cohesive is your community, what kind of social capital do you have, assessing social vulnerabilities. You know, do you have certain areas of your town that have food deserts, et cetera, things like that. So all of that goes into effective resilience planning. And I love this definition from the Rockefeller Foundation, and if anybody's really interested in resilience planning, the Rockefeller Foundation is doing a really cool thing right now. They have a grant-funded program in which they're working with 100 cities from around the world, and they're getting all those different communities to actually communicate with one another and share best practices and experiences and challenges that they're overcoming. They're providing them with technical support as well as a chief resilience officer. So it's a really neat worldwide program to track in resilience planning and building those communities. And then they have a great definition there, I think, and because it kind of covers all the different domains that we talked about earlier. And they have, it's just a beautiful website with lots of pictures and, you know, quotes from around the whole globe, you know, sharing what they're doing, what different places are doing based on their economy, based on what's projected for their area relative to climate change.
Is that Winrock, or is that different Rockefeller?
No, it's Rockefeller, like New York Rockefeller.
Okay.
So this is back to the Partnerships for Resilience and Empowered Planning program that we were talking about earlier, and these are some of the goals for the program. One of the major goals that the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, which was the grant funder, wanted us to focus on was building deeper collaboration in the Southeast Network. And that's because they know that it's through that building more of that social cohesion, even within a region, can help because we learn from each other. You know, we share resources, we share how we overcome certain obstacles. I mean, one of the things that keeps coming up on our calls is how do we talk about resilience planning in an environment, a political environment, where people don't want to talk about climate change? It's an untenable subject culturally. And so that's just one of the things that we're talking about now. So we're sharing those ideas with each other and those struggles. So deeper collaboration, and I think some of the thinking is also that if any of these communities end up really facing a disaster, that we're going to be more likely to help each other in those times if we have those relationships.
One of the good things about being in the Southeast and working with other Southeast communities is that political component that Joanna mentioned. Many of our neighbors in the Southeast have the same political realities that we have here in Arkansas. You know, we're working with progressive communities that are in states that aren't particularly known for being on the forefront of progressive policy. So it's just the reality we have to deal with, and we have to work on messaging and strategy, and it helps to have others that are in the same boat.
Definitely. And the nice thing about it that I found is just the term resilience. It doesn't seem as off-putting sometimes as maybe even the word sustainability is for different people of different political persuasions. Like, most people can appreciate that it makes sense to look at risk management. It makes sense to deal with the realities of extreme weather events and prepare for those. That's even a conservative kind of thing to do. But you may not need to put it in the context of overall climate change. But most people are not in denial that we're having more extreme weather events. So if you can just talk about that without talking about climate, sometimes that's easier. And resilience is not so much of a scary term yet. So, yeah, we are gonna develop a handbook by the end of this year. That's one of the goals too. That was the last bullet. That we're hoping is going to be a really effective and at your fingertips kind of resource for these communities in doing their resilience planning. And these are just some good websites to check out, you know, in terms of learning more about all of these subjects that were put together by our consultant that we're working with from the National Environmental Modeling and Analysis Center out of North Carolina. This is another, right now the Obama administration has decided, and this is really important for us to think about going forward, they're really putting together a website that's going to have more and more data about climate change that is specifically tailored for local communities to make decisions for their area and help them with decision making and planning. And right now, the information that's on that website is mostly related to coastal communities, because I think that's where a lot of the concern is, in terms of cost and loss of life, et cetera, with Hurricane Sandy and Katrina, et cetera. But their plan is to add more and more data regarding, that will be helpful throughout the country. So it's kind of nice that they're doing that. And these are just more tools. This is another website that you can, other websites that you can look at. And that's the consultant that we're working with, NEMAC, the National Environmental Modeling and Analysis Center. And then these are just some highlights from the handbook that we're working on. We've just barely started. We're working on the outline right now, so this is a draft outline. And I just thought this was a really good slide in terms of that, because we are a local community, we're not going to make all of our decisions just based on climate. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it, particularly the budget and everything that has to be paid for in the budget. And so this is just sort of a little algorithm for a decision tree, if you will. Just one example. And then these are the high points that we already went over earlier from the National Climate Assessment relative to the Southeast. And this is ongoing, the handbook outline. So if with anything that you're doing, whether you work in healthcare or if you're going to apply some kind of a treatment, and this applies also with community resilience planning, you want to do a thorough assessment. So that can be, like I was talking about earlier, your social vulnerabilities, social strengths in a community, also what kind of infrastructure vulnerabilities are there in a community, economic, et cetera, so those different domains that we were looking at earlier. So you want to start with an assessment and then decide, what can we do, what do we need to address first? So it's kind of like a triage, like you would in an emergency room. What's the most critical and where do we need to put our money first and our resources? And these are just some major domains that you would definitely want to consider in community resilience planning overall. Food systems, economic resilience. You always want to coordinate, of course, with emergency management, disaster response. We talked about social and ecosystem services. One community might want to put in an ordinance to protect their tree canopy. We have a streamside ordinance. So just anything like that we could do at the local level. Sometimes it's hard because, ecosystems are regional. And, a lot of times we just are making these decisions at the micro level, but they're kind of macro issues overall, and you're just basically doing the best that you can where you're at. And then, of course, we want to always ensure that mitigation is part of the conversation, that doesn't go away, that we're going to continue to do everything we can to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and you do that through energy efficiency and more use of renewable energies. Unfortunately, we have a lot of renewable energy in Arkansas. It's just really a matter of putting in the right policies so that we can use it more, and we're lucky to have PACE here in Fayetteville, so we're getting started. And then there's a lot of energy efficiency programs that we can take advantage of too in our community. And infrastructure, that has everything. That's anything from levees to decisions about roads, whether you're going to use permeable surfaces or not, et cetera. And all of those things are going to be more and more important going forward in a changing climate that's going to be getting warmer and warmer, because the summers are going to get hotter, they're going to be harder on the roads, the winters are, we're having more and more ice events as well, and then you want to have those permeable structures as much as possible in terms of moisture so that you can have a little bit more control over the hydrology and also less evaporation. And then, of course, you want to go back and make sure that what you're doing is working and where it needs to change. And everything that I've read about resilience planning talks about the importance of being more and more flexible in the future. We've tended to, in human cultures, across the globe, and when we set a policy or a law in place, we expect it to be there for a long time if it's working. But everything that I'm seeing about resilience planning is there's going to be so much change, not only with regard to the climate, but the way that the climate affects the economy and the way that the climate is going to affect our agriculture and food production, that we're going to have to probably be changing our policies and procedures and laws much more quickly. We're going to have to adapt faster.
Is all this work just the 10 cities doing all this, consultant, or Who all's behind this? Or is it that whole Southeast Sustainability Director organization?
Yes. So, the 10 cities, we got a grant through the Urban Sustainability Directors Network to do community resilience planning, or to figure out how to do community resilience planning, really, and educate ourselves on it, because we feel like this is a really important and new topic, and there's a lot of information out there on it, and we need it as sustainability professionals in our communities. We need to understand it and, sip from the fountain instead of trying to drink from the fire hose. And we need to also figure out ways to disseminate it to our communities that, is palatable and makes sense. So there's a lot of resources out there that we're looking to. The National Climate Assessment is just, one of those resources that's being developed and put out by the federal government. But this prep program that Joanna is helping to co-lead with a gentleman by the name of Jim Fox at the University of Asheville, North Carolina, is just for the 10 cities, but is basically helping us tailor that message for our communities in the Southeast.
Is Fayetteville one of the cities? Is that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
yeah. We're actually the lead city on it.
Oh, okay, and Asheville is one of the cities too?
Asheville, North Carolina.
That's awesome, and it's a great place to go.
Yeah.
Well, who are the others, is it on the website, the other cities, or just some of them, or is it?
Nashville and Knoxville.
Did you have it on there? I'm sorry, I didn't see it. I must have missed. Oh, there they are. Okay. It's hard to see that, but, let's see. Oh,
We're
that's-
one of the smaller cities, if
So we
not
got
the
Florida.
smallest.
Asheville, North Carolina is about the same size as Fayetteville, but yeah,
Yeah.
several of the other cities are significantly larger. Right. Miami, Atlanta.
Okay, there we go. Charleston. Atlanta, yeah.
Mhm.
Orlando.
And Fayetteville's the lead city.
Mhm.
It's awesome.
We're also kind of alone now.
Yeah, we're the only city.
We're in the lead.
We're going west.
We're the only one in the
Get
central
away
time
from the
zone.
ocean.
Yeah.
Southeast of all of
And Huntsville, Alabama, that's good. Nashville, that's great. So, so you're talking about micro and macro, and that is an issue, because what Washington County or Fayetteville is doing, which you probably can get a good part of Washington County to go along with, there might be other counties around that might go, we're not doing that. I mean, so part of it is to get the message out and try to educate, persuade, all of the above, just all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think really a lot of it is going to be, what's going to come out of it are, where are policies and, inadequate or contrary to, or do new policies need to be developed that help prepare us for the realities of a changing climate and make us more resilient. So one example might be, and this goes back to my, hotter, drier summers illustration, but the street trees that we plant in Fayetteville. Obviously, shade in the summertime is going to be important if we're, facing more 100-degree heat.
Mm-hmm.
But the trees that we've selected in the past might not be the best trees to select for the future climate. We might need to look more to what's planted in, like Amarillo, Texas, or Sacramento, California, somewhere that already experiences, really hot, dry summertime climatic conditions, for a guide in terms of what are the best street trees to select for planting in Fayetteville. So that's just one example.
Yeah, I was thinking about something in the news about where are the trees in the new highway that was constructed. Remember that little flap a few days ago? And I'm thinking, trees in the middle of a highway area, how much benefit is there for, the whole reasoning behind trees, and Aubrey is a great enunciator of these points, is for people to get under and be shaded by them, right?
I think it's
It's
pretty much
one of the reasons. There's stormwater mitigation benefits and urban heat island
out in the middle of
effect benefits.
a divided four-lane highway. Nobody's going to ever be under those trees, and mitigation and all the rationale means something different there. And being able to see that clearly and say, okay, so be it, we'll do our trees somewhere else, different kinds of trees. I'm still up on my soapbox about trees, because I don't think we're gonna grow any trees unless individuals adopt them. I really think that's, I don't think you can mandate tree cover. I think people have to do that. It's kinda like bringing someone through high school to establish a tree.
Well, if I may, one of the things about that highway construction on 265, I don't know what soil's in the median right now. What they can do,
It's hard to conjure up, some, mature forest down the center of that new highway.
you know,
Astronomical cost to do that, to make it
Yeah.
happen. You can
Our-
throw some money at it and it still won't happen.
our trees around apartment complexes that are required die off in great numbers. I think I've said this in this committee before, and they have 3 years, they have to replace them, maintain them. After that, it's over. They're gone, they're gone.
Yeah.
And I can show you the apartment complex nearest my home that I see all the time. And each year, they've had to replace a whole hundreds of trees that are planted in little holes, and they don't have the natural soil there anymore. So it's what I call fake green space around where you go out on Huntsville here. Recently, they widened, put a wider sidewalk, and that's nice. And then they slope into people's yards on the low side. They let fill dirt work over there, so it decreased the amount of natural soil and vegetation that can grow naturally there. And then in that path, between the sidewalks here, the streets out here, and they've got this area cleared, and you'll see that they compacted red dirt in that space, then they put some depth of gravel, limestone gravel, and then they put some topsoil. Something will grow in the topsoil, but it's not going to do well. In a lot of places on development sites, they require them to put in watering devices. And think about the absurdity of having to water this whole thing of mow it, fertilize it, and water it, and then mow it again as fast as you can. That's one of the biggest problems, all the mowing that goes on. If we could get the rules changed in Fayetteville to allow people that their yards go up. We do have that option with native plants, but the code enforcement department does not hand out a little brochure about that ordinance to people. They just give them the things that you gotta mow. And I see yards with beautiful spring flowers, native primarily, that get mowed because, you know, they're not allowed to let it grow, and they don't know that they can ask for that option or get certified. And we've got national forests being cleared right now. Any of you know where the Headwaters School is on Highway 16? It's where the headwaters of the Mulberry, all the rivers in northwest Arkansas come off highways out there, you know.
Where the mulberry is?
Yeah, the little Mulberry
Yeah.
headwaters, there's something called the Headwaters School. It's been there since 60-something. They've changed the location slightly, it's across the road. But those people now are in a big fight with the Forest Service because they're going to remove the adult trees, the big trees that have grown up there in the second growth forest, and the old growth that's left in places, and manage it for the future. Well, the future of those trees is probably sound for a long, long time, those mature trees. They're sequestering a great deal of CO2 as they are alive. You take them out and plant some more, and there'll be different species. There'll be more sunlight hitting the ground, more sunlight hitting every small stream. There are so many things to do locally and try to maintain the environments here. What you're saying about we're on the very edge. When you drive to Tulsa from here, you quickly get out of the forest and you're on
Mhm.
more and more open plains. And that's great too. And it's natural. And I'm very much a person who wants to maintain prairies that we have. And mostly those are old pastures right now. They're being paved over red dirty for subdivision. But we're also doing the same thing inside the city. And with all our efforts for urban agriculture, the biggest thing we can do is to preserve that soil around everything that's built anywhere. Don't build things up with red dirt, put a house on it, and then put some shallow places to plant on it. That's what they do. And they have to be watered. And they put mulch down. Mulch just means less diversity because you're saying, oh, well, we just want this tree. We don't want any wildflowers around it. So it's really easier to pick it out, you know, to remove the invasive things and have more diverse vegetation there if you don't mulch it. But mulch goes into our rain gardens, part of what they teach.
Yeah.
But why? Because in nature, on a prairie, and in the woods, there's this very diverse species. Many species are growing, and they grow in succession during the season. You know, there's goldenrods in the fall. There's milkweed of different species, all during the growing season. They bloom at different times, and they go to seed at different times, and they're there for the butterflies. And oh, by the way, as I shut up now, the Mayor Jordan was out at the stream cleanup at West Fork and accepted an award from the Beaver Watershed Alliance for this project of streamside protection that this group worked on for years, and other good things. And this group's also supported all those things. And he made a nice little speech in response and got that. And the only other community that got an award from that group was Winslow. There was a lady who's been a big leader up there. That's really headwaters for Beaver Lake. Much of it comes from the mountains to the south and surrounding areas.
All right, well, Joanna and Peter, what can this group do to support the resiliency planning efforts that you're involved in? How can we be a part of the solution?
I think, you know, educating ourselves about the topic is really the main thing at this point. I feel like I'm just beginning to learn more and more. Joanna is closest thing we've got to a local expert, I think, in the arena.
It's what I'm focusing on in my PhD program is environmental dynamics is community resilience planning, but I'm certainly on a huge learning trajectory myself. I mean, the thing that comes to my mind when you ask that question is just really kind of like what Peter's saying, be thinking about it, but at some point we're going to need to really engage our community and determine like a stakeholder group for developing a plan for our community. You know, right now we're just at the stage for this year where we're kind of like educating ourselves on what goes into a plan and where we get the resources and the tools, and but at some point we're going to need to involve a lot more people and create a plan and implement one for our community.
I feel like we need, you know, our community to help us with input on what are the things we need to be resilient against. Like, what things are going to start being affected.
What would you miss if you didn't have it?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. What are people already seeing?
Like the tree example is only, you know, one example that I'm able to come up with, but I feel like there's a zillion other things that other folks interact with day to day, you know, and that are going to be policies that we're going to need to start thinking about, changing or adapting to.
I mean, farmers are already seeing a lot of changes in this area.
Well, and I'm getting calls about drainage issues in neighborhoods. And it's a lot of older neighborhoods, and I know I experienced that in my neighborhood. Just the ability to deal with these larger and larger peak stormwater events. And, you know, is there some support that we can offer in educating people in best practices for managing stormwater on their site. You know, we have the low impact development manual. Do we need to expand that to an ordinance that is a requirement for development instead of an option, so that we're helping to slow, spread, and infiltrate that stormwater when it does fall. And then, you know, we have our urban ag ordinance, but, you know, are there policies we can do or services we can offer to help people grow food? Because I do think this is going to become a more and more critical issue, and also to educate people on how to grow food in a changing climate.
I do too, and I think, you know, the work that, like, Tricycle and other, like, organizations are doing, like Feed Communities, is integral and will just continue to be more so, like you're saying. And I think that there might be some opportunities for expanding the urban ag ordinance in the future, for sure. And maybe, you know, having some educational sessions on many topics relative to resilience, but like you're talking about in terms of growing our own food, that it's not so much a hobby, you know, as we're going to really need to be doing this and thinking more about this for, I hate to use the word like survival, but, you know, I mean.
Okay, I had a couple questions. First of all, did you get money for this?
Yeah, we got $40,000 from the Urban Sustainability Directors.
So each one of these cities.
Collectively, we got.
Oh, collectively.
It was a little
more.
Right.
Oh,
We're using-
okay, so, okay, that was the first one. And then the second one is, so we're talking about resilience in climate change. And climate change, of course, is a hot political issue. So are we just jumping over climate change and just going to resilience, and we're just not going to talk about the fact that we have climate change?
Right.
I mean, that's like a fact. We have climate change. It's no longer a theory.
Right.
But it seems to me like we're just going to not talk about that nasty little thing and just go right into
I think it depends on who you're talking to.
Okay, so you are trying to kind of, we'll get to
Well,
I mean, see, I'm having trouble with this because it's resilience to climate change.
It is.
That, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
right.
what it is, but we don't necessarily want to say that to certain people.
My understanding, and maybe I was reading between the lines, but part of the study was how to present it.
I would think that would
Some
be
of that,
fine.
Yeah, so, yeah, a little bit of finesse or marketing or
Or
whatever.
do we need some euphemisms for climate change, or what do we need
or just,
here?
Or to
you
put it
know?
in a different context, that, you know, it's, you know, you don't have to call it climate change, just say, you know, what if you lost your source of food, you know, you put, you know, I guess, deal with individual symptoms that people care about.
What's affecting them, and then someday,
Yeah.
when everybody realizes that there is a climate change.
I mean, that's actually a pretty good analogy you
Yeah, it is.
started
Yeah,
to
it
draw.
is.
I mean, we do have to still try to treat the patient in terms of dealing with what's causing our climate change, our, you know, our carbon dioxide emissions, our
Exactly, yeah.
control, and we've got to rein that in. But there is recognition that changes are already happening and are going to continue happening, and there's feedback loops. There's, you know, carbon dioxide that was emitted 50 years ago that we still haven't seen the effect of. So the CO2 we're emitting today,
yeah.
we're going to be feeling those effects for many, many years to come. And we've got to begin to prepare ourselves for dealing with the reality of what that, those changes
The
are
horse
gonna
is
bring.
already out of the gate.
Well, it is. It was in 1970s when you couldn't see stars in California, but they did something to change
Yeah.
that. But if you look at that on a global thing, and since I was just on the other side of the world and saw it, there are places where you can't see stars now.
Yeah.
And nobody's doing anything about that. I mean, in developing countries and things like that, it's just not happening. So, you know, there's the bigger thing. So, but what you're doing is just trying to deal with the patient, as you say, but we're not really connecting to anything else yet.
Well, I wouldn't say that, you know, I mean, resilience is not a term to just sugarcoat, because it's like you're saying, it's resilience to climate change, but I hear your concern.
Yeah.
You know, and there is that concern that if we start talking about resilience, are we forgetting to talk about mitigation? Are we just keeping mitigation under the rug? But that's why in any good resilience plan, you keep mitigation in there. Like mitigation, we've got to keep working on. We can't stop sustainability efforts and trying to reduce greenhouse gases in our atmosphere.
Yes.
But we also have to deal with the reality that carbon dioxide is already at very high parts per million in our atmosphere, and it stays around for 80 to 120 years. So it's not going anywhere. It's already affecting our climate. So we've got to start talking about adaptation. And resilience is not a sugarcoating term, but it is true that when you talk to certain people, because of the cultural and political realities that we live in, you know, climate change can be a touchy subject. But if you talk about extreme weather events, the symptoms,
Yeah.
most people can talk to you about that, you know, because you can't deny that Sandy happened, or, you know.
Or
Well, like-
Bologna, or.
Yeah, like-
Yeah, but thank you,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
Moore, Oklahoma's been getting a lot of press because it was a year ago, and just to talk about how do you recover and get back to normal, you know, what's normal, and how do you get back to normal? And I think, you know, that's, you know, maybe using the symptom analogy isn't the right one, but I mean,
No, I think it's a good
it's
one.
like those are all things we need now. Whether
No,
you
that's a
agree
good
on,
analogy,
whether
yeah.
somebody agrees on climate change or not, they know that severe weather happens, and your community wants to protect itself, and
And cities are really kinda, we're on the forefront of this issue from, you know, for a couple of reasons. A, we're dealing with the weather phenomenon and the issues that are created as a result of climate change. But B, we're positioned structurally and organizationally to generally be more nimble and able to make changes and movement, and we tend to be the progressive think tanks across the country.
Mhm.
I know the mayor at the National Mayors Convention you were recently at, this was a topic that, right, I mean, it was at the forefront of their topics of discussion. Some mayors are on board with this. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Some of the topics was that, you know, you may not be able to reduce it, but how do we adapt to what we have, try and bring it back into the normal range. I mean, realistically, a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
And will be going on. They're a very cutting edge group of folks. Very progressive thinkers.
Yeah.
So I have a question to follow up on that, because you talked about eventually creating a resilience plan.
Yes.
Basically kind of a master planning process for resiliency. But it seems like for this, it also, it can't be separated into just resilience, because this touches on so many different things.
Right.
Are there any examples of communities that are addressing that, or how will that play in? Because I would hesitate to create one plan that when you're looking at, well, this is something that, you know, transportation needs to be thinking about, and it's everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna learn a little bit more about that. Our next, is our next webinar the one where we're visiting with Baltimore, Maryland,
and
some-
Joplin.
and Joplin, Missouri, who've both done a fair bit on resilience planning, and, you know, Fayetteville doesn't even have a true community sustainability plan. A lot of communities have, and it's been something, that we have, made baby steps towards incorporating into our next, comprehensive plan update, which would be City Plan 2035, planning process that would launch next summer. But I'm beginning to suspect more and more that instead of a sustainability plan, what we actually have is resilience woven all throughout that comprehensive plan, which guides land use and transportation, and it's going to have an urban agriculture component to it. It'll touch on kind of all those areas that you're alluding to, including sustainability. So that's sort of what I'm thinking at this point, although we really haven't, you know, completely made that decision yet. But
I think that's a really good point that you're making, though, Dana, and one of the speakers on the last call that we had kind of brought that up, maybe from two different angles. First of all, like, each individual community is going to develop its own plan, you know, and we're hoping that more and more communities throughout the world are going to start developing these resilience plans and include sustainability and mitigation, because it really is happening at the local level. It's like we're all having trouble with our national governments who are, you know, yeah, anyway, I won't get into a political discussion. But, you know, it's like we can actually do things more at the local level, you know, than we can at the national, and if you have states, the state level. But also, one of the points that was made on the last call is that instead of, you know, starting over from scratch with this whole comprehensive plan, but we need to look at what's already in place and make sure that we, like you're saying, interweave resilience into what's already there, instead of, you know, and incorporate resilience thinking into what systems and policies are already in place on all these different levels, you know, from waste management to water management, et cetera. So we definitely want to make sure that we do that going forward.
I'll be curious to see what that looks like.
Yeah. Me too.
Oh, wait.
The plan that the prep 10 communities are working on, it's gonna be a plan for how to plan more than it is specifics.
Right.
Yes.
So it's not gonna get into specific policies necessarily, or is it gonna have model policies?
I think it'll have model
Yeah.
policies and, you know, areas for communities to focus on and think about. But yeah, it'll essentially, the idea is to equip these communities to begin a community resilience planning effort, to give them all the tools and resources necessary to launch that effort, which will time up well with our launch of our city planning process next summer.
So you already have a scope, or maybe it's too early, but, like as far as picking your areas like food security and water and, jobs and all, you know, I mean, is that already, that framework out there, or are you still developing that as you go?
I think it's being developed, but I mean, I think we're looking at the National Climate Assessment for some of that guidance. Sea level rise will probably be one of them, temperature, decreased water availability, you know, but sort of then the next level down, like what are those gonna likely cause in terms of actual effects in your community, like the street tree example I keep referring to.
Well, you know, if we were to go back to something more acute, you know, we've seen several communities devastated by tornadoes recently. You know, it's something that we could do. You know, do we have community tornado shelters or designated places? I don't believe that we do.
Well, we got some designated places, but it's not enough to hold the population of the city.
And so, you know, I know that our DD has been working on it's the software where you can go in, you can log in, you put in your address, it tells you where you vote, where, you know, what day they pick up your trash, and a lot of different things that services your neighborhood, and maybe that's something where, you know, we could identify community storm shelters.
Yeah.
Or if you have a storm shelter that you are willing to let your neighbors in, you know, something like that, so that people have a place to go if Fayetteville were ever to have that.
Maybe there's tweaks to our building
Yeah.
code that need to be made to harden our structures against
Exactly.
tornadoes.
You know, when they were looking at those slabs down in Bologna, they found that they did not have anchor bolts, and so they were sheared off. You know, they just swept them off of the slab. The whole house was gone, and there were many casualties because they had weak building codes.
I know when Arkadelphia was hit by a tornado in 1997, of course, it was a trailer park hit, no joking, and there was only one trailer left in that trailer park after the tornado went through. It was the only trailer that was actually anchored and tied down. So the city's response was, after that, well, they said, well, all right, new ordinance here, every trailer's gotta be anchored down, to be permitted in the city, so.
Yeah, but I would hope it wouldn't take a disaster here to
Right.
make us be proactive about these sorts of things. So,
Yeah.
you know, we are the Environmental Action Committee, and so I think we need to be focused on developing some actions. And while there's a lot of, you know, a lot of this is theoretical, and it's gonna take a while to identify exactly what we need to do, I think, you know, we have some great tools. We have our low impact development ordinance, which I think we need to strengthen and make it mandatory so that we start dealing with the stormwater issue right now.
Right. Good point.
And then, you know, we did a great thing with our urban ag ordinance, but we've got more steps that we can take to encourage people to grow food. But so, I think we've got some good priorities outlined for our 2014 plan for this committee, but let's, from now on, when we're planning the agendas, I'll be looking specifically at those priorities in relationship to resiliency planning, and hopefully we can develop some new policies and programs.
I would like to go off of that a little bit more and also say, you know, as you are on these calls, if there are immediate action items that maybe this committee can be focusing on, I think it is important for us to educate ourselves as a group, but let's not wait any longer. If there's something that there's a growing trend that's showing great strategy that's working in other cities, I would love to be hearing about that, so we as a committee could be
Yeah,
going ahead and
definitely.
getting started on that right away.
Thank you. I'd love for us to continue to report back or, you know, invite some of you to some of these calls if you're interested. I mean, I feel like the EAC is a natural organization that's already formed to be the building or the start of a stakeholder group in this process, you know, for our community.
Absolutely. Well, I would like to see, maybe at the beginning of each environmental action committee, if you wanted to give a report about the resiliency planning efforts, and then also, an update, Peter or I could give an update on the pace for the energy improvement district.
Oh, yeah. It'll be good.
Most recently, we just, completed the draft of our request for proposals for, a firm to manage that, or administer that program, and it's been sent to purchasing, and they're gonna fine tune it and distribute it. If anyone has any, firms or groups that might be good candidates for administering that program, if you could forward that information to Peter or I, that way we can make sure that everyone who might respond to that RFP has it.
Is that gonna, get on that subject, is that gonna be able to cover residential, or is that still, later on?
It is written in such a way that it could be expanded to include residential. Currently, there's guidance from FHFA, Federal Housing Finance Authority, that essentially puts the kibosh on most residential PACE. But there is proposed legislation in Congress currently that I just heard about the other day. It's proposed in March by one congressman from New York and 2 from California, I believe, and now has 26 co-sponsors, and it's in a subcommittee that would basically tell FHFA, back off and allow residential PACE to happen.
Is that something we should be contacting our congressional representatives?
I'm not sure exactly what the chips are going on, in Washington D.C. related to it, but I think eventually it will be something that our congressional delegation should hear from the city about, that we would like to see support for that. But hopefully there's going to be some movement on residential PACE at a national level that fixes that problem that we have right now.
But in the interim, we have a lot of work that can be done.
Yes, right here, yeah, I mean, just on local, yeah.
So we'll get started there. And we'll hopefully have the process perfected by the time we get to residential. Okay, are there any further comments or discussion items on this topic?
I have a couple other unrelated announcements.
Okay, well then we will move on to announcements.
So, Thursday or Friday, the RFP for the solid waste, recycling, diversion, and there's another word in there, master plan, the one that you all helped us review the RFP for a couple of months back, that closed, and we got 5 firms that responded on that plan. I haven't actually had a chance to take a look at any of the proposals yet, but I'm told by Leif Olson, who works with me, that at least a couple of them look like they're from really good firms. And so we're going to continue down the road in selecting that firm that'll do that master plan for us. So.
Have they assembled the selection committee yet?
Yes. Yeah, there's 7 of us on the selection committee. And then their other announcement is Allison Jumper called me from Parks and Recreation today and told me that the Urban Forestry Advisory Board at their May 14th meeting heard from SWEPCO, who's a local electric utility, about tree trimming and their policies and some potential changes to their policies related to tree trimming. If anyone's interested in learning more about that, you can go to the city's website and watch that video on their tree trimming discussion. There's going to be a future meeting with Ozarks Electric related to tree trimming, and if and when I hear about that in time, I'll get that word out to you all in case you're interested in attending and being part of that conversation.
Angela, did you have any?
Yes, I just wanted to announce that the Fayetteville Forward Green Economy Group will be having a workshop on June 6th at the Chamber of Commerce. That's from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. We will have representation from the University of Arkansas, the city, and from the Northwest Arkansas Planning Commission to talk about sustainable transportation in Fayetteville, as well as it will reach into Northwest Arkansas. We have really great representation there to talk about what is being planned, but it's also a really good opportunity for concerned or interested citizens to give feedback to those organizations as well, to talk about how we can improve transportation in Fayetteville. And so I'd like to encourage anyone to attend that. Again, that's June 6th, 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. At the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce. It is open to anyone, and we will be devoted completely to transportation in that conversation. Hope to see you there.
Will there be snacks at that meeting?
Yes, there will. And coffee.
Coffee.
That makes it a little easier to sit there.
That is true.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
With the recommendations we gave regarding Ruppel Road at the last city council, have those been taken up? I mean, I know that passed, that's happening. Do you know where that stands as far as those recommendations and that plan goes?
That would be a good question.
The council unanimously adopted a resolution expressing support for a 4-lane cross-section.
Right.
And the engineering division is moving forward with a contract with a consulting firm, and I'm forgetting who, to do the design of that road work. And do you recall, have y'all approved that contract yet, or not?
No, I don't think we have, no.
I don't, okay.
You approved something last Tuesday.
I don't
I
think
think we was just doing a contract for the group to look it over. I'd have to look back.
yeah, we've discussed something, but I don't believe we've
I
actually.
don't think that was it.
No. But have they been given our recommendations?
I know you gave them to them at that city council meeting.
Yeah, we gave it to the council, but I'm not sure that they have been delivered to anyone else.
Yeah, just
So we
wondering.
need to make sure. Thank
I
you
can
for
follow up on that. Those,
Yeah.
Speaking of follow-ups, I was curious, what was the outcome on the Mount Sequoia stormwater culvert, the box culvert thing? Is that moving forward?
No, it's quite a box culvert.
It was,
That was our first meeting.
Yeah, it was-
The underground.
Oh, the
with
underground.
dry
Oh, yes,
creek.
the
Yeah.
underground. I have not heard any updates on that.
it was gonna be kind of a couple-year-long project, I didn't know.
It's not under Mount Sequoia, it's handling the drainage from Mount
Yeah,
Sequoia,
from.
under, the Washington Willow.
oh,
That
yes.
property.
Oh, you have something.
No, not really. It did not go to city council, I think primarily based on the feedback that you all gave to the engineering division. They decided to, kind of regroup, and rethink their, communication with the neighborhood, and we're working to do some community outreach and work with the neighbors to try and address some concerns that were expressed in the neighborhood. And I assume it'll be eventually coming back to council for final blessing, but, they're still working on that.
Okay. So the engineering department decided, okay.
It's an
Yeah, I
engineering
think
project, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like I read
But
something.
the entire project is what we're talking about, not just we weren't discussing whether the culvert should go in. It was the, defining the area.
Yeah, the
Right.
For the riparian.
For the inside area.
Yeah.
But we're talking about you're talking about their kind of regrouping on the entire project, correct?
Well, I mean, there's the drainage work, which is the infrastructure work, yeah, and then there's the map change as well that was gonna go along with that, so.
The
I
regrouping
think
on
the,
both items.
I think I'm not exactly sure if they're relooking at the actual construction plans and any major changes to that, although I did recommend some LID, treatments along Walnut Street, is that the?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be incorporated into their, swale area. I know they're looking at that. But then also, yeah, what does make the most sense in terms of the boundary delineation, and is there opportunities to do anything with that small section of creek that, currently exists? So, and then what can be done in terms of addressing any other neighborhood concerns and impacts, related to the construction of the project, 'cause it's gonna be a fairly intrusive construction experience if you live along that street.
Right.
Okay, any other questions, announcements?
If any of you are interested what the Fayetteville Public Schools have been doing for sustainability, we'll have the annual end of the year Green Team celebration this coming Thursday, the May 22nd. It's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Botanical Garden of the Ozarks, and anyone is welcome to come. The morning will feature student presentations and awards, so it's a fun chance from about 10:15 to 11:15 to hear actually from the students what they've been doing in the schools. And then they'll have lunch, and in the afternoon, we have guests from all different environmental organizations that set up educational tables, and the students rotate to that. So it's a fun event, open to the public, if anyone wants to come this Thursday.
Okay, anything else?
Is it, is it too early to talk about the Butterfield, the garden thing? Is that still in early planning?
Yeah, probably too early.
Okay, that's cool.
We'll talk about it at some point, though.
Yeah.
All right,
And there's one other, the annual Peace Garden Tour is this Saturday from, what is it, 10 till 2? Anyway, I didn't bring in my posters, I'm sorry. But anyhow, it'll have, I believe, 9 gardens that you visit, one ticket, and they're all different. So many plants, native and non-native. Beautiful.
and so that's Saturday at what time does that start?
I think it starts at 10.
Finish.
I've been carrying around.
And where would someone go for more information on that? Is there a website or a Facebook?
Check the Omni Center.
The Omni Center website? or
Facebook.
Facebook, okay. Yeah, I attended. Good luck. Okay, did you have something?
No, I was just saying, it would sit in, I thought it goes all day.
Yeah, I went last year and it was a really enjoyable tour, so I highly recommend it.
I got one more quick one. Next meeting, Alderman Marsh mentioned this at the beginning, our next meeting is gonna be a tour of the West Fork of the White River. The stream restoration project that, help me out with the firm's name, Connie?
Sandy Formica, I can't remember, my sister.
Illinois River.
I can't remember the
So
name.
if you recall, in either November or December, Sandy Formica came and spoke to us about stream restoration and talked to us about several of their projects. Well, they've just completed a really amazing project on the West Fork of the White River and done an awesome job with some really challenging, cut banks and erosion problems that were going on up there. And
extreme weather too, all
and
winter.
some extreme weather.
Watershed Conservation Research.
Thank you.
That's who it is.
Thank you.
Anyway, so we will meet
it's
here
long.
at 5:30, and I'm gonna have a van for us, and then we'll van pool down. It's just past the airport, so it's a pretty quick ride down there, and then we'll get out and do the tour. And Sandy will lead us, and you guys can ask questions. And so just wear appropriate, shoes. It's gonna be a little bit of rough walking. You're probably gonna
What's the date on that?
wear some shoes you don't mind getting a little bit of mud on. That'll be June 16th.
Oh, that's Monday.
Yeah,
It's our next meeting.
it's our next meeting.
Okay, that's right. It's a Monday.
And, there might be bugs as well, so it might not be a bad idea to put on a little bit of, bug spray, if you're bothered by bugs. And, the sunshine, so maybe a hat or some sunscreen if that bothers you as well. But we'll meet here at 5:30, ride the van down there. There won't be any video coverage of the meeting, and we won't really be doing any official business, but it's an amazing opportunity to see a really impressive project that they've done on this stream bank restoration.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you.